It's worked. It's working. Yes, it's working. Hello. Ah, I got here again this evening and it was like, where's the camera? YouTube can't find your camera. I'm like, come on now. Hey guys. How you doing? Uh nice to see you here finally um this evening on our evening check-in. Well, I did all my apologies this morning. Uh, it's interesting because what we're looking at this week is conditions for creativity. What is it that we think we need? What do we already have? And um, today, really, the lesson turned to what do you do when it doesn't work the way you think it will? You know, you saw the little cartoon I put up at the start of this video, which was sometimes there's nothing you can do. And so you can go back to bed. And I know I saw from messages from you guys, we made it, yes. Messages from you guys that some of you just said, oh, well, I guess this means go back to bed. Good. I'm glad. Maybe it meant that we needed a little rest. I'm good. I'm good now. This morning I wasn't good when the new phone, thank you, the new phone wouldn't work this morning when the alarm wouldn't go off. And then I tested it over and over again, and it just wouldn't work. Um, I was so frustrated, and so I was trying to be in a calm place. I tried to journal, but I had so much adrenaline pumping through my system that I just put on my sneakers and went out and burned some of that off, um, so that I could so that I could be here with you again this evening, so that I could calm down. The day didn't go the way I wanted it to go. It happens. And so let's talk as we move forward into our 40 days into creative practice about creating out of what some might consider not ideal circumstances. As I told you this morning, and in that when I went to get do my grad work, um, what frustrated me the most was that people like me weren't in the literature. And oh, you're asking about Ron and Gullah Gullah Island. Some of you are asking about that. That's for another time. Ron's fine. Um, he's somewhere in the house. Uh, but basically, here we talk about the creative process, and I'll talk a little bit about my role on television, but that's not really my focus. Um, but when I began to do the study, I saw that so that I was missing. People who are just going about their lives every day and being creative weren't included in a lot of these studies. And even in the education field, when folks were tested to be, gifted and talented, the tests weren't necessarily measuring creativity. They were often measuring compliance, which is not the same thing. And if you use different tools, you might find that some of the students who were less compliant were more creative. As a matter of fact, Torrance, who had created the many of the tests that we measured divergent thinking with, later said he felt that they weren't a good tool. But by then they were well entrenched into how we determine who's creative. So how do we know? Well, we creative people are those of us who take our curiosity into our everyday lives, who look around us and see what's there, who pay attention, and then take what we see and what we feel and what we observe and interact with it in interesting ways. Okay, good night, Rat. um, and we all here who are in this group, that's why we're here, is to be more creative. So, are you under the impression, perhaps, that You could be more creative if you had an ideal circumstance. Have you thought about that today? If only this, when this thing happens, then I'll do that. I told you in an earlier message about how as soon as this, then I'll write the book. As soon as I have, as you saw in the cartoon I put up yesterday, the right studio space. But there's this wonderful artist, her name is Cassandra Gillens, who does some of her most amazing paintings sitting on her bed. She didn't have a studio. She sat on her bed and she painted from her bed. Um, so we have, I think, ways to be creative in the lives that we have now. And uh, you've had that thought around making music and herbal medicine. Yes. As soon as you get the perfect setup, you can do that. But you know that many of our ancestors did it without the perfect setup. They were interested in herbal medicine, and so they observed what herbs they had. They collected them, they grew them, they wandered through, I don't know. They foraged, or in our case, we wandered through the garden section. Um, it's time to look at let me back up on that. Let's begin to accept the fact that we already have what we need to be creative in the ways that we desire, right? The bigger kitchen, that could help. But one of my friends who is a chef and a personal chef, she would say I always had a bigger kitchen than she did. She would have these little apartments with, and amazing meals that would feed all kinds of people came out of that tiny little kitchen because she utilized that space. So knowing that somewhere we have the time, when I tell myself I don't have the time, I then notice how much time I just spend on YouTube and Netflix and go, "Oh, okay, um, that I do have the time, um, that I do have the space, the bed, the corner, the table, the car seat." Let's look this week at what we already have to express our creativity, not with a sense of pressure, because we're trying to do it easy, like, okay, let's not freak ourselves out. But yeah, people running restaurants out of their apartments. I've seen that too. Um, we aren't trying to stress ourselves out here because there's enough of that. But what we do want to do is recognize that we already have what we need. If you didn't download the attachment from this morning, I hope that you will, and read the creativity card, the reflection creativity card, which was about how our African ancestors, which is what this was based on, created with what some would say nothing and under terrible circumstances. And I also mentioned this morning the studies of, I remember reading the story of a man standing at a table in Auschwitz singing arias with the smokestacks all around in the background, um, singing for his soul. Uh, I have the only thing really standing between us and creative practice is us accepting that we have what we need to engage more creatively. So think about that tonight. I appreciate you guys logging in and coming back. This morning I started giving myself, having those talks. Oh, Natalie, you really fudged it up. Fudged is not what I said. Um, but, and then you were so kind. Folk were like, Nat, relax. And I also had to tell myself that sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to. And that's a good lesson about any creative practice, regardless of what you're interested in creatively. Creatively, you burn the dish, you pick the herbs too late, they wilt in the back of the fridge, you put the paint on and it's not working, you don't measure properly and you cut the wood and it won't fit, um, you calculate wrong. It happens. And then what? You start over, you change your direction, you change your mind. That's what I would tell folk when they came in my workshop. You didn't make it, you didn't mess it up. You just changed your mind. You just went in a different direction. You just have an opportunity for exploration. You spilled the paint on that painting, and you're like, I could work with that. So we're going to talk this week more about that. Bringing our curiosity, paying attention, and being specific about having what we need to engage with what we want to engage with and in the way we want to engage. So I urge you to share what's happened with your day with me. A lot of you have already said, well, I read the handout. I spent more time with my journal. I went back to sleep. Oh, good. The other question I asked, I've set this up at 6 a.m. and 6 a.m. Eastern Time, US. And one reason I've done that is because, one, I'm a morning person. Two, I wanted to give folk who actually go out to work at least on this end of the country opportunity to do this before they had to engage in their day. Is this time still working for you? Is 6 a.m. working for you? Is 6:30 better? Let me know. Send me a message in underneath the this post. Uh, Tomorrow I will be here at 6 unless everybody says 6:30. Otherwise, I'll still be here at 6. I really will. I'm setting 2 alarms. Okay, these times have been good for you, folks said, and yes, I'll wait to hear what other folks say as well. But that's good, Start a practice. Eventually, you get into the flow of it. So we want to do that, and let's prepare tonight for tomorrow, so that we can just do it. We're developing that practice. We're developing this routine, and I didn't even ask you about your weekend. My weekend was good. I had a great weekend. I did not do any work in my studio, which is not to say I wasn't engaging creatively. There's always something in process. Uh, I took walks. I read books. That was good. I did housework. I did some laundry. And so we're all good. I hope your weekend was a good one, was a creative one and a restful one. I will see you here at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, day 8, prepared. A winery and book library. It sounds like my kind of weekend. That's okay, guys. Rest well, go prepare, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.